Hello, what is up? We are back for another episode of Onside Chicks. I am Jordan, Sporty Jordy, and I'm here with Kaylee.
Yes,
And
we're back.
we're back, and we are just coming off, just so you guys know, we're doing another show called The Fantasy Underdogs that we just finished up. So make sure to go check that out for all fantasy football needs. And unfortunately, Carson Wentz has brought the injury bug that we caught very heavily in Philadelphia. He brought that with him to Indianapolis, and now the Colts are in a very tricky situation. So that's going to be our main focus for the first half of this. Carson Wentz is out for 5 to 12 weeks, and not only is he out, but Quentin Nelson is also out for 5 to 12 weeks with the same exact injury.
So strange and weird to hear. So Frank Wright was describing this because obviously it's strange. They have the same injury. They're out for the same length of time, underwent the same procedure with the same doctor. Very, very strange. But Carson Wentz, obviously he's injury prone, has a history of injury. So there were things that were already issues that caused that, whereas Quentin Nelson was a completely fresh dude who just happened to catch the same injury. But it's a wild coincidence, and I don't know if it's like a bad omen on the 2021 season, but I'm trying to just not read too much into it, because if there's ever been a sign in preseason, this is likely one of them, and I'm a little stressed about it, I'm not gonna lie.
No, and imagine, so now for the Eagles to get the first round conditional pick, Carson Wentz either had to play 70% of this season and make the playoffs, or play 75%. Now it looks like that definitely isn't happening. And also, as all of this was coming out, news broke that Devontae Smith is dealing with a sprained MCL, and he's not he's still at practice, but he's very minimal, not really doing anything crazy for another 2 to 3 weeks. So there was just so much breaking at one time, and I was like, oh my God, it's literally already happening. But I'm going to choose, it's too much. I'm going to choose to look at it as kind of maybe bad news for the Colts, unfortunately, as much I don't want to wish anything bad upon them, more than the league, just because I'm not ready to accept that yet.
Let's get into it, because let's start with Carson Wentz and what you think this is going to, what impact this is going to have on him and his future in the NFL. And then we can jump into what, we think about the Colts situation as a whole, because they have a lot going on in general. And now all of this on top of it. And we just got off this other podcast, and I said a lot of the same things, but so much of what I think Carson Wentz's problem is his confidence, his lack of trust in the system he was in Philadelphia, the lack of trust in himself, his body, his safety after injury. And I think you could really see that on his face. I think there was a lot of times where he's standing in the pocket and really just doesn't even look like he knows what's going on. And we know he does. We trust people who know the game, who talk about Carson Wentz and say he's a very smart quarterback. He's a guy who knows the game. I don't think it has anything to do with his ability as a quarterback. I think it is so mental. And as someone who has been through injuries and athletics, and I can understand where that mental block comes in. I guess I just really worry that instead of getting the fresh, clean slate of Indianapolis, having a coach you're comfortable with, getting to press the reset button on what has otherwise been a really unfortunate couple of seasons for you, I worry that this is going to set him back in that process and kind of send him scrambling after this season. And I hope not, because I want better for him. But I guess, where do you see this having an impact on him? And I know this is your man's, so
yes.
Yeah.
No, it's tough. And I know we just kind of brushed through this on the Fantasy Underdogs as well, but I do, and I hate to admit this, I think it is going to be really tough for him, just because we saw, and Philly is a very tough place to play, and Philly fans, they want results and they want them now, and if you don't give them, it's brutal. So Philly was tough on him, and I think that really got to him. So I was sad to see him leave, but excited for him to get this fresh start. And now with all of this, and now you already see everyone on Twitter saying his bones are made of paper, his bones are glass, everyone's just coming at him. It's just an unfortunate turn of events. And physically, this is an injury that he should bounce back from totally fine, but it really is going to be that mental game that I think is going to get for him. And now you have talk, people want to get Nick Foles there. And I think if he hears that, catches wind of that, if that Nick Foles' press conference, did you see him talk about it? It was like he was basically begging Frank Reich to come in and get him out. And he addressed it beautifully, and he glazed over kind of his relationship with Carson, everything that happened with Carson. But at the end of the day, Nick Foles was like putting his career first. And he was like, you've seen what I can do in your offense, AKA go win a Super Bowl. So please come get me out. Please come get me off of third string. So I think all of these things together, it is going to affect Carson Wentz more than I think we've all, even worse than I think we've seen in Philadelphia, as scary as that is. So I am nervous for him, and it's tough because I've made the case this whole offseason. Carson Wentz is going to go to Indianapolis, and he's going to get them to the Super Bowl in the next 3 years. And this season, he's going to have an MVP campaign. And now I think all of that kind of gets pushed to the back burner. And I'm hoping he can prove me wrong and make me feel better about it. But it does make me very nervous heading into this season.
Yeah. And it's weird too, because I think when you, even from the outside, you can see that Carson Wentz is a guy that you really have to buy into, right? For this to work, you have to buy into Carson Wentz, who he is, what he brings to the table, and you have to convince him of that every single week. And that might not be convenient, and I don't think that's a situation for every team or every coach or every GM, but you really have to be there in his corner, reassuring him that he's your guy every single week. Otherwise, this doesn't work. It falls apart. And I think it's tough to hear those things, and I don't think that's really going to help. I also don't think Nick Foles is their answer. And I don't
think so either, because we've seen him. You saw him personally.
Coming into a Super Bowl and having to be at your absolute best for a handful of moments, right, is very different than coming into a team and taking them from start to finish through a regular season that is now an extra week long. And I don't know if it's a temporary fix until he's back, but I think Nick Foles wants something a little more permanent. So I think the only way you're getting Nick Foles to Indianapolis is if you promise him the consideration of being your number one guy. And so I don't think that's their answer, but it is really concerning. And now, you know, they're struggling on their O-line with injuries, and this just adds to that, right?
And this was one of the strongest O-lines, minus any injuries. This O-line is solid. So now it's kind of, you're putting a damper onto everything. And now how is this going to affect Jonathan Taylor and his production? Like, there's so many downfalls that come into this. And going off of the Nick Foles thing, like, yeah, it's funny to joke about, but at the end of the day, that would literally, I think, hang up Carson Wentz's career. Like at that point, like it's because how can you bounce back from that from a second time? It's like, even if Nick Foles comes out and do nothing, like even if he stinks, I know Bears, but
no one wants Foles. No one wants
He can come be a backup in Philly. I think Philly would cherish it, but I don't think he wants to be a backup. But at the end of the day, you haven't proved you can be a starter. And that's coming from someone who almost got the number 9 tattooed on them after our Eagles Super Bowl. So like, I would jump in front of a bus for this man.
Right.
But he's not a starting quarterback. He's the best backup of all time.
Correct. And you don't take, look, like you can't sit here and say like, you've seen what I can do. It's like, we have, and it's not impressive. And like, I get it. Like, it is so great that you were able to step in that moment, bring something to Philly that they had never had before. You are part of that legacy. You always will be, right? You always will be that guy. You will never be that guy anywhere else. That's plain and simple. You won't do it because we've seen it. We've seen you try. We've seen you. And to be fair, Jacksonville is not a perfect situation by any means. You weren't walking into what Indianapolis has. Like, that's just a fact. You weren't. But at the same time, you were walking into something. You had something to work with, and you couldn't make anything out of it. You can't make anything out of it in Chicago. I think there was moments where they really said, you know, here, try. Here, take the reins and try. And we didn't see it happen. And I think it's tough because those rumors are only going to make Carson Wentz, it's taking him more steps back. And it's really unfortunate because they're, like I said, they're struggling with their O-line. Now you have Quentin Nelson, who, by the way, his pass block win rate last year, 95.5%, right? he's a hard guy to replace that position. So if you think that your quarterback, regardless, neither of them are coming back at 100%. If you think your quarterback's going to feel good about standing behind that O-line, which already is dealing with injuries, now you have Quentin Nelson. There's a lot going on. And Carson Wentz is not the guy that handles that pressure well. And that's why I thought Indianapolis might be a better place for him to go, because they had their ducks in a row, right?
It was the safest place for him.
It was. He had everything. Like they addressed some holes in the draft and free agency. They spent some money where it mattered. They saved some money where it mattered. They got him over there. He has a comfortable situation with their coach. It's one of those things where everything was right.
No, and it's literally so crazy how quick this changed, and how 2-3 weeks ago we were like, this is the best situation for him, because like you said, Frank Reich, someone he got along with very well and respected him very much in Philadelphia. So you have that relationship that's already built. Like, that's not something you have to work on. That's there. You also had, and I emphasis on had, one of the strongest O-lines in the league. So now you have a comfortable relationship with your head coach. You have a comfortable relationship in the pocket, and you have weapons. Like, there are people on this offense, and now it's just like all of that is just crumbling so fast. Preseason hasn't even begun, and the Colts are crumbling.
It's tough too, because you look at their schedule and you look at what they've got coming up, and Seahawks, Rams, Titans, Dolphins, Ravens. So the Rams, the Dolphins, even the Ravens, like, those are not easy defenses to take in the first 5 weeks of your season. Yeah. To be fair, if you get Carson Wentz back in a quick time frame, right? And Quentin Nelson as well. If you get him back at that upper end of that 5 to 12 weeks, and you're looking at 5, 6, 7 weeks, you might be okay. There's only one divisional game. And we know that while it's not ideal to lose games regardless, divisional games matter. And when you're trying to go to the playoffs and just sneak in, like, I mean, last year, that is really what mattered, right? And one divisional loss against the Jaguars last year almost kept them from getting into that spot, right? So it is one of those things where you have to look at the positives of this situation. And I think based on what we're hearing so far, now nothing means anything until they get into recovery and they start rehabbing and you really see what their abilities are. But so far, what we're hearing is that it went well. There's no additional issues. So if they come back in that 5, 6, 7 week range, I think it would be really wasteful to go out and spend more money on someone else. But I mean, I don't know. What should they do at this point? Is it ride it out, deal with who you have? You got Easton, you've got somebody who understands the system and is a competent quarterback, or at least has been a competent quarterback at some point in his career. But are you going out and looking for free agents if you're the Colts front office?
Honestly, especially after dealing with Carson Wentz in Philadelphia and seeing everything that comes along with it, I'm saying unless they see something in Easton that we don't see yet, like, unless they know, like, we are fully comfortable with him taking over this offense, even if it's just for a year. Like, if they are, but I'm not sold on that. This isn't someone I fully trust. So I would definitely be going out and looking at other options. And trades are an option, but if I were them, I wouldn't make any crazy trades. I wouldn't give up more than you've already given up for Carson Wentz. Yeah. There are a couple, like the Nick Foles. I know. Tell me how you think about this. I think Gardner Minshew might be a good guy to get out of Jacksonville now that you have the number one, the almighty Trevor Lawrence. Like, there are some guys that I think you could use for a year as like that transition period and just to see. But it's a tough situation, because it's like, if you don't go out and get someone, but then Carson Wentz can't come back, or he comes back and then he gets hurt again, then you're really screwed. But then if you do go out and get someone and he comes back in 5 weeks and is totally fine, then you also put yourself in a situation. So it's kind of a coin toss. And at the end of the day, they just kind of have to make a quick decision at what they think is going to be best. And in my opinion, which is no expert opinion, I would go out and get a backup. just in case, because also we saw it with the Cowboys last year. What if Easton goes down? Like, you just never know. Like, I would want that comfort in knowing you at least did everything you could to get through, because the Colts are a playoff team. This is a very solid team. So it's super unfortunate, everything that's happening right now. What would you do if you were the GM?
Yeah, you don't have a lot of resources for trades. So I think you're right and spot on with saying don't go out and trade for somebody that's going to cost you money, right? And I asked this question more as a devil's advocate, just to spark conversation before on like, does this make them a player in the Deshaun Watson market? No, because they don't have the pieces to give up, right? Like, they don't have the draft picks, they don't have the capital. They've paid Carson Wentz a lot to be there. Obviously, we know that entire situation with his contract and how, what this does to Philly, him leaving Philly, all of that was very laid out in an easy to understand way. It cost them money to get him there. So you don't have the money to spend. You don't have the draft picks to give up. You don't really have the players to give up. If you're going to go out of your way to get someone there to make a run at the playoffs, which is just getting yourselves probably back close to where you were last year. I don't know that you're going to get better at this point, but I do think that if you can maintain that level, you can't really give up any of your players. Every single person on your roster has such a vital role in making the Colts who they are and making them up to the level that they were last year and what they're looking to repeat this year or exceed this year. So you can't give anything up. So you're right. I think you've got to sign someone cheap. You got to bring in someone who is a backup who has game experience. He has that experience getting on the field, being a guy who leads a team, being a guy in that locker room. Now, I think you could obviously lump Nick Foles into that, but I think we've also seen that experiment play out. Now, I don't ever want Gardner Minshew to not be wearing a Jaguars uniform, but if he were going to, obviously it's not ideal to go to a divisional rival, but I think that's probably the only reason it wouldn't happen. But I do think that that's the kind of guy you need, right? You need a guy who's led a locker room. He's led a team. He doesn't need a strong O-line to succeed. And that is key, right? Because Gardner Minshew is the guy he's shifty, he's fast, he can run, he's all of the things you want in a guy that's just willing to put it all out there and really has nothing to lose because his career is just not in the spot that he wants it to be. So I think that's the perfect kind of guy to come in and lead your offense. Now, there's probably a lot of those around the league if you go picking around and looking through rosters. If it wasn't divisional, I think Gardner Minshew might be maybe on the short list of people to call, just because I do think, I don't know if it's biased, but I do think that he did a lot of impressive things in Jacksonville. And I think
I don't think it's biased because I feel the same way. Like, I think he deserves another chance somewhere. Yeah.
When you look at the people that are getting opportunity, whether it's to be a backup or to even start in some of these teams and these systems, I think it is.
If Andy Dalton can be QB1 in Chicago, like Gardner Minshew can be QB1.
I was going to say, I don't want to throw Andy Dalton under the bus, but that's exactly who I'm thinking of. And if Andy Dalton is a QB1, then there's a lot of people that probably deserve that opportunity too. And he's right up there. If he's not the number one person that earned that, then I don't really know who is. So yeah, I mean, I think it's interesting. You're balling on a budget. So you make that decision of like, how confident are you, no matter how good the results of the surgery look, how confident are you that he's going to be back in 5 weeks? And if you're confident, then maybe you don't go out and get anybody or spend any money because you've got time, right? You've got like the first couple weeks of the season aren't going to kill you.
Yeah.
They're just not. So you've got time. You've got, enough time to figure things out, but you have to be 100% confident that 1, he's going to be back in 5 weeks. And 2, he's going to come back at 100% mentally and physically, which we don't know because I don't think we've seen him 100% mentally in a long time.
No, probably literally probably since the initial injury in our Super Bowl season, because minus that injury, he was having an MVP season. And kind of going off of what you were saying earlier, everything Nick Foles did, I am eternally grateful for it. I think it was beyond incredible. It was literally the best day of mine. Like, I can't even express how much it meant to me in the city of Philadelphia. But at the end of the day, Carson Wentz is what got us to that point. And Nick Foles did the perfect job of finishing that off. But Carson Wentz got us to that point where we were Super Bowl contenders and playoff contenders. And he did everything he had to do to make that possible. So, like, for him to have that and then for them to build the statue for Nick Foles after, like, to know you were that close to being the one to make it all happen. And then Nick Foles gets all the kudos and then you come back and things aren't quite right. It's hard to bounce back from that. And now you're in a new city. You're looking for a fresh start. And now you're literally in the exact same situation that got you to that point anyway with the injuries. So it's tough. And
Brutal.
so to ask him, like I said, this injury wise, I think he's going to heal and I think he's going to be fine. And athletically, physically, he's going to be 100%, but it's going to be the mental stuff. And I don't think you're getting 100% of both. And it's going to be very risky.
Yeah. Gosh, it also presents a really interesting question because this division's not strong by any means, but it presents a question: is this prime time for the Titans? I don't know if you're ready to hop into AFC South preview, but
no, I think that was good. I'm ready. And unfortunately, I'm ready, but I'm not ready because now we're both going to have to admit that the Titans are the clear favorites in this division, which, and like, you have a very valid reason to not be a fan of the Titans. Division rivals, makes sense. Me, there's nothing about the Titans that I should hate, and I don't even want to say I hate them, but I don't like them. Like, they're not. Why though? Like,
not
why? Like, there is nothing there that is like, there's no trouble. They've got Derrick Henry, who's like the king. Like, Ryan Tannehill is just this decently good quarterback that comes out and does exactly what, like, there's nothing wrong with Tennessee. And yet I root against them every single week, but they are definitely the clear favorites to come in and take this division now that all of this is going down in Indianapolis. And then minus them, now you have the Colts plagued by injury. You're very uncertain of what's going to happen in quarterback. You have the Texans, which are just a dumpster fire. And then you have the Jags, who are in the middle of this rebuild. And yes, you've gotten the Holy Grail, but how long is it going to take to build a team around him? And is Urban Meyer going to come out? Like, there's so many questions within this division. It's going to be weird.
Yeah. And I hate to say it, but if it's going to be any year, it's going to be this year for the Titans, right? And we see them do this thing where they flirt with the playoffs, whether it's wild card or whatever, and they'll have like an impressive win or two, and they just never get past that, right?
Yeah.
And I think it's tough because when you have those opportunities, you have to take advantage of them. And it very much is like, it's reminiscent of like Jaguars 2017, because you had like the Texans and then JJ Watt goes down. They have all these injuries and it's like, oh, this is the time, right? Like, this is our year to make this happen. And I think that's very much what the Titans are dealing with this year is, this is the time, right? Like, the Colts were the one thing standing in your way because I think the Colts are fundamentally better at football. Not that they have a better roster, not that they have better talent. They are fundamentally better. They're more well-rounded. They have a better scheme. They have a better system that works for their players. And they're more confident when they do it. And they do the things that they need to do week in and week out. Tennessee is just so inconsistent, right? Like, one week they'll look like they could contend for the Super Bowl. The next week they're losing to a team they should never lose to. And it's just one of those things where it's really hard to get a read on them. And that's because their offense is just run through Derrick Henry, right? It's the Derrick Henry show. That's not really changing. They've just added some offensive weapons, but it's tough because as soon as a team figures out how to slow down Derrick Henry, you're done, right? And we saw that time and time again where, you know, one week he's putting up 300 yards, the next week he's putting up 50, right? And that just happens because people figure him out.
Especially against the Browns.
Correct. The Browns, the Jaguars figured out Derrick Henry. Didn't mean that we won games, but it definitely meant that we slowed his production down. And I think that's one thing that, you know, now you don't have to rely on him so much. You have Julio Jones, who is probably going to be hit or miss, but you've got A.J. Brown coming back. You added Josh Reynolds from the Rams. So you've got guys to throw the ball to. So you've got these pieces in place. On paper, You're way more well-rounded. Your offense is stepping up. Your defense is honestly building, which has been a super weak spot for them recently. Now, can you put it all together and make it equal wins? I don't know. And that'll be interesting. And I'm again not going to stop rooting against them, but if it's any year, it's this year for the Titans.
If they can't now imagine how terrible it would be for them if the Colts are still very flaky. They're hit or miss, even if Carson Wentz comes back halfway through and the Colts still end up taking this division. Or dark horse, now you're going to like this. What if the Jags just like wake up and figure it out? Like, if the Titans don't take this to, like, this is theirs for the taking.
Right.
Getting to the AFC Championship game is theirs for the taking because now you're winning your division. You're better off in the playoffs. You just got to do what you do best and win games. But at the end of the day, I'm not confident that they can guaranteed make that happen. And it's weird. And now that Julio's there, like, I want to root for Julio. I would never wish anything bad against Julio. And the only thing that kind of makes this a silver lining is if the Titans can do it, if they can get to the Super Bowl, if Titans can win the Super Bowl, I'm like, wow, they did it for Julio, or I'm excited for Julio. Like, that's the only thing that really makes me excited for them at this point.
Yeah. I mean, I love AJ Brown. I really like Derek. I like those guys. I want them to succeed. I don't want the team as a whole to succeed. But yeah, I'm just not confident. And that is not me being biased. I just think they've proven that with all the pieces on paper, with all of the right, like with all of everything going right for you, you still can't make it happen. Right. And so I think that's tough. And I don't want to say everything because they've been missing pieces on defense. They added, obviously, Bud Dupree is a big thing. Jeffrey Simmons has been huge for them. So there's guys there. You've got Caleb Farley now. There's guys there that are shoring up their defense. But again, those are still question marks. Like Bud Dupree's a question mark at best. And I think there's pieces that they've added. And if everything comes together, that's great. I still think that there's a world in which the Colts end up in that top spot, regardless of what's going on at quarterback. And like you said, I always want to think there's a way the Jaguars end up there. And I think that's going to be a big question mark. And can they put together the new pieces fast enough in Tennessee? And I think that's the biggest question mark, because I think at this point, the Jaguars spent money to dive into their defensive line. They really, really wanted to rebuild that part of their defense. And I think that's going to be a huge problem for Derrick Henry. We already know how Derrick Henry operates. That's something we can shut down relatively quickly. So if we can get to Ryan Tannehill and now eliminate some of your big options at receiver, I think that's a whole different conversation we're having. Now, can that happen? I don't know. But I like to think that if all goes well on the Colts front, I mean, I would just like to think that they're going to still be sitting at second or third in this division. But realistically, if I have to put a prediction on paper, I'm going to say they take this division right now, just because I'm not confident in Carson Wentz coming back even in 5 weeks and being ready to go to lead to the playoffs.
Especially because think about how much time he's missing in training camp and preseason on a brand new team. So now you're already missing weeks at a time. And now you still haven't gotten into your groove. Like, you're just starting to get accustomed to this team. Like, that's asking for a lot. But kind of going back to the Titans talk, they take this division, they go into the playoffs. Do you think they're going to be able to compete with powerhouses like the Bills and the Chiefs? Even Browns, like Ravens, who kind of finally figured out their upper hand this past season after they upset them 2 years ago. Like, these are just teams that I don't see the Titans being able to walk through.
The Titans winning the AFC South is like, it's like your ticket to hell, really, because once you get past the AFC South, you are screwed. And that goes for really any team that we're talking about. Even the Colts. If Carson Wentz works out, what are the Colts with a healthy, mentally stable Carson Wentz against the Bills, the Chiefs, the Ravens, the Browns? Like, the list the AFC is very, very deep. And that has been a big switch over the past 2-3 years, something we were not used to seeing. I think for a long time, the Patriots and a couple other teams were able to really just, mow down the AFC because it was so weak. And so really your only rival is getting to the Super Bowl and whoever you're facing on the other side of the line. But now it's like getting through the AFC is going to be very, very hard. And so I don't see the Titans or the Colts able to get past that, right? I don't see them making it past division championships because there's not one thing that makes me confident in either of those teams against anyone else in the AFC who's going to be winning those divisions and showing up in the playoffs.
Yeah, no, the AFC is definitely difficult, but also we have seen, like, we saw the Bills in the AFC Championship not look like the Bills that we saw all season. We saw the Chiefs in the Super Bowl not look like the Chiefs we've known for the last 3 years. Yeah. So at the end of the day, I hate to say it's luck, because in football, luck isn't really it's strategic, but at the end, like, luck plays a part. And if they show up, and it would literally take powerhouses like the Chiefs and the Bills, coming up and not looking the way they normally do, and then having teams like the Titans, the Colts, do every single thing right. Like, they can't make a single mistake. Like, every snap matters. That is how you're going to beat them. And I'm not saying it's impossible. It's definitely possible. They can definitely make it happen. And like, we Eagles won the Super Bowl with our backup quarter. Like, crazier things have happened, but it's hard and it's going to be really difficult. And I wouldn't come out here and say right now that I feel confident that even with the state of the AFC South, the Titans are set up in this great position to go on this run. Like, they're in a great position to win the division. Yes. But for everything that they have to do to make it to the AFC Championship, to win the AFC Championship, I think you're just asking for too much. And I don't think they're in the position right now to go out there and do it.
I honestly, and I was thinking about this a lot, and I have to check myself because I have a personal opinion about a lot of these, but I have to think, like, am I confident that the Titans are going to beat the Jaguars twice and then beat the Texans twice? No. No to either, right? And the same thing with the Colts. Like, I thought about it and I was like, even at their best, am I confident 100% that they will beat us twice and beat the Texans twice? And we'll talk about the Texans and the Jaguars, but no, like, the answer is no. And so I think that's where, yeah, of course, longevity wise, making it 17 weeks into regular season, do I think those two teams have the best chance of winning the division? Of course. Yeah. But do I think that either of them has this division, signed, sealed, delivered, put away? No. And I don't know if it's just like naive hope for my own team that we'll beat at least both of these teams once, but I would like to think that we could take both of these teams down once. And if I have that belief, which is not something I had last year, then I'm not really loving their chances of, one, getting to the division championship, and two, making it anywhere past that. So if it's going to be any year, it's this year. I just don't know that it's the best time for every other division to be going up against the rest of the AFC. So I don't know. It's a tough road for either of them, but I don't really have confidence in either of them at this point. So
yeah, no, it's definitely going to be tricky. And now let's kind of move. The Colts and the Titans clearly on paper are the top half of this division. And then you kind of trickle backwards to the Jags and the Texans, who the Jags they're moving in the right direction. Like, they did everything they had to do. The coaching, I know it's we have no idea what's going to happen. And there's still overall a lot of pieces that we need to fill.
Yeah.
The Texans are just,
they got a lot.
There's a lot there. There's a lot to unpack there.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. I think the expectations for both of these teams should be very low, if we're being honest. And if we're being realistic in general of where they're at and things that have gone on. For the Jaguars, I think they did the rebuild very quickly and in the correct way. And we've talked about this before. I think there's a lot of teams that are not committed to the tanking process. And
the Lions.
Correct. And not committed to rebuilding. And that puts them in a weird position because when you're in that middle, you don't land a guy like Trevor Lawrence. You don't get top talent. You don't have the money to spend or the draft picks to give away. And you don't have those pieces to play with. And so I appreciate the burn it all down and let's start over mentality, because I think that served us really well, getting us where we are today. So I think coming off a year where you won one game, of course, you have a rookie quarterback, a rookie head coach, a lot of talent. So like take down your expectations, but it should be higher than one game, like for sure.
Yeah.
So, and I think
I say the Jags easily win 5 games. I'd give them in a 17-game season.
I'm looking at 5. Yeah.
I think 5 is a win.
I think 5 is a win.
Texans, I would be very happy with 3.
The Texans are just tough, bro. Like they've dealt with everything you can throw at a team.
If I were the Texans, I would win precisely 0 games, and I would go out and I would get the number 1 overall pick.
I mean, that would be the goal, right?
I think that's best case scenario for them. Right? Literally burn it to the ground.
Yeah.
And start over, because
they're the only team where you can really have that mentality going into the season, right? Because I mean, some teams might emerge where you get 5-6 weeks in, they haven't won a game, but right now they're the only team where it's like, I would just burn it down from week 1.
Oh yeah.
I don't know.
I wouldn't even don't even show up this, like, don't do anything this, like, stay under the radar, do as minimal. And like, I know that's a lot. You can't ask, like, players are not going to walk out there and throw, because they're playing for themselves. Like, especially in Texas. Did you see what DeAndre Hopkins posted on TikTok?
Yeah.
Someone commented and they were like, well, how did you feel when the Texans traded you? And he was like, look at me with this opportunity with the biggest smile I've ever seen.
Look, like, it was just a
jail in Houston.
Yeah, it's a poorly. I don't want to say it is because I don't really know, but it was a poorly run franchise, top to bottom. Not good things happening there. I still don't love the way that they built up this front office and this coaching staff. I think that proves. And look, Deshaun Watson, we don't know what is going on trade-wise, life-wise, lawsuit-wise. There's a lot happening in his world, and his spot in the NFL and on the Texans is so up in the air, and everything about him is up in the air. But I think one thing he was right about is, you can't tell a player, your star player at this point, because you don't have anymore.
You don't have anyone else.
You can't sit there and tell him you're going to get a say in who we hire as coach. You're going to have an impact on who comes into this team and shapes it for the future, because you're our future, and then not give him that opportunity, not give him that respect, not live up to what you said you were going to do, and then expect him to, come in and play and be happy. And so I think you've already started this season off with mistrust and with a disconnect between the front office and the players. And so I think there's going to be a long road ahead. And I think Deshaun Watson's a piece of that puzzle, but look, I mean, Tyrod Taylor's not an incompetent quarterback. I think we saw good things from him in Buffalo. Unfortunate with, LA, and that's a whole. That was
Cleveland.
Right, in Cleveland. Those are fluke situations. So I think it's weird that the only time he's been given the starting job, he's had these like freak injuries. But at the same time, I think he is capable of at least not letting it crash and burn every single week. And so I think, they've got pieces. Like when you look at their roster, it's really not that bad.
They got Phillip Lindsay now.
Right. No one can replace Will Fuller. Let me put that out there. You're not going to replace Will Fuller, but you've got guys, right? Like Cooks, Cutie, Miller. Like you're not hopeless. They have 7 tight ends on their roster, by the way. So I don't know how many of those will make it, but I could see them keeping a lot more than like other teams might keep at that position, just because, I don't know, extra protection, extra option. I don't know what it is, but I don't know.
It's weird. And it is this weird in between, because I talk all of this crap on the Texans organization, but at the end of the day, I want Tyrod Taylor to get the chance that he deserves, because he needs it. Like, and how excited I was for Justin Herbert last season. Like that still came with the twinge of pain for Tyrod Taylor, because you never wish that situation above all was the weird, like that's a once in a lifetime thing. And it just stinks that it happens after he was in Cleveland, replaced by another rookie. Like, it's just sad. It's unfortunate for him. So I do want him to go out and have a good season. And it's crazy also how frustrated we've all become with the Green Bay Packers organization and what they were doing to Aaron Rodgers with their veteran quarterback. I think it's even worse what the Texans are doing to Deshaun Watson, because this is a young guy that a young, very, very, very talented guy that can take your organization to the next level. You can build completely around him. You can make this stellar franchise. Granted, this is before pre-lawsuit, pre-everything, all of that off the table. And you're going to do him dirty like that. I think it's so much worse than it's very similar to what the Packers are doing, but the Packers were doing it. And I don't want to defend them at all because I'm very pissed at them, but they were doing it with the mindset Aaron Rodgers is at the end of his career. So let's try and save our asses a little bit. The Texans are doing it to someone young, someone who they still has plenty of time left. So I don't feel guilty for them for where they're at now, because I really think they did a lot of it themselves, saying Deshaun Watson's their guy, doing everything that says otherwise. And then when he politely requests a trade, holding him hostage. And then now you're just in this crazy situation. Like, it's so insane how the Texans have just tumbled downward so fast. Like, it started off as like, this organization isn't great, and it's just gotten worse and worse over this entire offseason. And now heading into this preseason, it's very unfortunate.
And to give all the power to Bill O'Brien, and when I say all the power, I mean all of it, right? Like, every decision that was made in that front office and in that organization ran through Bill O'Brien, which is just a wild thing, and to let it go for that long. But I think, and we talked about this with the Packers, when you get a read on what the situation really is, because none of us are in the front office. We're not at practice. We're not in the locker room. We don't know. Mm-hmm. But we can get a vibe from the other players on the team. And players will be ready to speak out for players who deserve that support, and very quiet when they don't. And so I think what you're finding in Houston, like you said, pre-lawsuit and pre all of that coming out, was players and a team that was willing to stand behind Deshaun Watson and really speak up against the Texans organization. And JJ Watt was really the front runner of that.
I'm sorry for wasting one of your years. Like,
that's crazy. And when you have a player, when you have one of your longest tenured players who is really a facet in your community and in your city.
In the league, like in the NFL in general.
Yeah, like if you have someone like that saying that, that's not a good sign. And I think about how insane it's going to look to have a Texans defense without JJ Watt. It's a little stressful, I'm not going to lie. But I mean, I'm excited for him and obviously for the Cardinals, but it's just going to be so strange because this Texans team is going to be nothing like we're used to seeing. And giving them credit, like we said, they've added some offensive pieces. I think Phillip Lindsay is obviously I love him and I'm happy for him and I hope he steps up. But yeah, like they've added defensive pieces, right? Like they had the worst run defense in the league last year. They had a lot of issues. You're in a division where you got Derrick Henry, James Robinson, now Travis Etienne. You've got all these guys and you can't stop the run. You're not going to go very far.
Jonathan Taylor.
Yeah, like crazy. Like you've got like this division is pretty good in the run game because that's all they've had for a long time. And so I think that is one piece that you have to get straight, and they are working on that. And when you think about like a Shaq Lawson, a Jordan Jenkins, DeMarcus Walker, like those are going to help that. But I'm just not that impressed.
No.
Like overall with who they've added, I'm just, and it's not the players individually. It's just, I think there's so much work to be done that is off the field that I don't know what you could do on the field that's going to repair this.
Yes.
Right now.
And it felt like they were just going out to get names. Like they got Phillip Lindsay, they got Mark Ingram, but they aren't building a team in the right. They were just signing names to bring people.
Random.
It's so random. Like it makes
no culture, no like
nothing.
Commonalities, not like you can see it in other teams where it's like, those players are going to be a team, right?
No.
None of that. It's so random. It feels so awkward. It just feels like you randomly pulled names from a hat and they ended up on this team. And
they literally hit shuffle.
Right.
And created an NFL team.
Right. I'm not loving it.
No, I'm very, I don't want to say I'm excited. Excited is definitely not the right word, but I'm definitely very curious and I'm eager and I'm going to sit and watch Texans games just because I want to see kind of what their plan is, how they're utilizing this roster and kind of if they're taking any steps to move in the right direction. But I don't know. Like I said, I will never wish anything bad ever on Tyrod Taylor. I want him, even if they come out and don't win a single game, I want Tyrod Taylor to look good and have a good season so then maybe he can end up somewhere else and he gets another chance. But it's just a very, very sticky situation. And we still so many big question marks surrounding Deshaun Watson. We have no idea really how that's going to play out. If he's going to play a single snap this season, which I'm voting a hard no. Like, I would be shocked.
I would be appalled. It's not.
Unless something happens that comes up, all charges are dropped and everything good. Like, that's the only way I can see him playing this season. And I don't see that happening. There's no inkling that says that is in the cards. So you literally need, I don't even want to say a miracle, but a lot, like, Deshaun Watson will not play this season. I will bet money on it right now.
Yeah, I would put a lot of money on that too. There's a lot going on. And I think regardless of lawsuit, whatever, I think there's still a lot going on within the organization. Also,
exactly.
if you look at how they're approaching camp, Tyrod Taylor is their guy right now. And there's no indication to suggest otherwise. So until we see something else, I'm just not convinced. But again, I like Tyrod Taylor, so I'm here for it. It's tough. It feels wrong in a lot of ways. And so I don't know. I mean, I'm not hating because that's probably 2 wins that we'll get. So, but still
2 of the 5.
2 of the 5.
Do you want to talk? Do you want to dive into your Jags a little bit?
We can do that. It always feels weird to bring up your own team.
I know.
But yeah, I'll say this. Expectations are low. I think it's interesting because we haven't had a franchise guy, like when you think through our history, to build around, right? Like we've never had this guy. I don't want to say never because we had Mark Brunell. I think, but you go back that far, right?
Yeah.
Like Mark Brunell, where you're like, if that's how far you have to go back, there's a problem. I don't know, the 15, 16, 17 years ago. But that was the last time we had someone that we were building a team around, right? And so I think this is the first time we have a franchise guy, or what we believe to be a franchise guy for the next, 10, 15 years, that we can build around and really have a plan. Because so far it's felt very, we're always just reacting. We're always, whoever is the next quarterback up, like the whole Blake Bortles experiment was wild. I can't imagine what the thought process was there. And so there's just a lot of reacting being done, whether it's our coaching staff, our quarterback, or our offensive weapons, or, we had a solid defense, but this is the first time where we have a vision, right? Like there's a vision for our team, what it can be, and who's the centerpiece of that. And so it's an exciting time, but I've also you think about all the times that teams draft a guy and it's like, oh, this is going to be our franchise guy. And it just goes sideways. And that happens a lot. Yep. And so to say I'm not worried wouldn't be fair because I'm definitely a little concerned. But I think we're in a good spot. We got young guys, not hype on the coaching staff, but I don't know. I guess from an outsider perspective, we said 5 games, but I guess, I don't know, Trevor Lawrence, is he the guy?
Yes.
Okay. I like that.
I'm sold. And I will agree with you. Coaching, I'm not 100% confident on, but that's something, if the coach isn't working, that's something you can go out, you find a new coach. That's a quicker fix than going out and finding someone to be your franchise quarterback. Like that makes, I would rather have issues at coaching than issues with the quarterback. And especially when you have Trevor Lawrence, like grown men would line up to be his coach and to get a chance to grow with him and build that team and be the one to have that Andy Reid, Patrick Mahomes relationship. Like people want that. So I do think down the road, you guys are set with Trevor Lawrence. It might just be finding that head coach that fits best with him. And who knows, maybe Urban Meyer is that guy. Like we don't know. There's a chance that it comes out and it works. But I think you are moving in the right direction. I'd feel very comfortable with Trevor Lawrence. I know you had your nightmares before the draft that it wasn't going to happen. And now we're here heading into this season. I think he himself is going to have an impressive season. And I think we're going to get to see him kind of shine, even if your record doesn't show it. Like I'm still convinced that we are going to see these moments from him that prove that he is going to be one of the college quarterbacks that transfers very well into the NFL. I'd be very surprised if that doesn't end up happening. He's like one of the few that I'm like confident about. Yeah. But yeah, I think it is just going to take another year or two, kind of let him get accustomed, see who works with him, and just build it up before you guys are really in the conversation with Titans and Colts. And who knows, maybe it won't even be the Colts anymore if Carson Wentz hangs it up and retires if he can't bounce back. But no, I feel much better about the Jags than I do about the Texans. The Texans I see no hope for. The Jags, I'm kind of excited for you.
Right. And I think that's my only concern is not necessarily our record, not our wins, nothing like that. It's just Trevor Lawrence is going to get a wake-up call, right? And it's not athletically, because I think he is, like you said, a very NFL-ready quarterback. He's been that guy. But he's also a guy who never lost a regular season game.
Yeah, it's gonna be the mental. It's gonna be the confidence that's because he needs to come in. They should be telling him every day, if you win one game but play great, that's all we need. Because to him, one win out of 17 is going to feel horrific. Like it's going to feel like a failure, but at the end of the day, it's not.
Right.
As long as you're playing great, you're building relationships, and like that's what matters in your first season.
Right.
Coming into a franchise that did the full burn down rebuilding.
Yeah. And I think that's the key, is keeping him focused on not 2021. What's after that, right? Mm-hmm. Because I think if you get him caught up in this year and what this year can be, I think it's a mistake. I think that for someone who's not accustomed to losing, you are going to lose. You're going to lose, and you're going to get rocked.
Yes.
That's plain and simple. You're going to get rocked behind that line at least once or twice, probably a game, if we're being honest. So like, I just think at this point, it is just preparing him mentally. But I think a lot of people look at our situation and think it's very, like, we're throwing him to the wolves. And I don't feel that. Like, I think that is a huge misconception about our roster. I think when you look at, like, of course, James Robinson had a breakout year, and I'm excited to see what he does. But you've got Travis Etienne, you've got Carlos Hyde, and all of those guys are so different and so unique and so efficient at what they do best. And then you've got a wide receiver core that has just only gotten stronger this past year. You've got young guys that really got the opportunity to stand out last year. You've added some pieces. And the only thing that you're missing, because you've added pieces on your defensive line, you've got young guys on your secondary. You've added, Shaquille Griffin, who's, I think, perfect for that role, just leading young guys. You're shaking up your defensive scheme. You're going back to a 3-4. I just think everything's in place. We don't have the tight end figured out, which I don't really care. Like, at this point, I'd rather have blocking tight ends to keep our quarterbacks standing up and our running backs getting through that line. I'd rather have blocking tight ends than have a pass catching tight end right now for this.
What do you mean you don't have your tight end figured out? You got Tim Tebow.
Stop it. If he makes this roster, here's the thing, is nothing as a Jaguars fan comes without punishment. Nothing.
Yeah. Like, you get Trevor Lawrence to do everything right, and then you Get Tim Tebow.
We can't have anything. Like, we can't be happy. It's so annoying. It's like, you get, like, here, like, you can have Trevor Lawrence. Sure, you get Urban Meyer. Like, cool. You can have all these, like, cool young guys who have a lot of opportunity. No, you get to be reminded of Tim Tebow. Like, nothing can come without punishment. And so it's hard because it's like you're rooting against yourself and for yourself at the same time. Like, I want to see Tim Tebow fail at almost everything he does. But I want to see us win games. So, like, the only option is he gets cut after camp. And I'm not there to make that decision. So who really knows? Who really knows?
Yeah. I still can't get over. And I'm not saying this to trigger you. I don't know why I have this gut feeling. Like, I feel like he is gonna be on the team.
No,
like,
he's gonna make this stupid effing roster. He's gonna get there. He's gonna score. It's gonna be some wildcat trick play, and it's gonna be like, oh my god, Tim Tebow. And I'm gonna be like, I'd rather actually jump off of one of the fucking 5 bridges in Jacksonville than watch this right now. Like, I'd rather jump off of any of them or all of them.
All of them.
Consecutively. Like, I don't know. I can't take it. I mean, I can't take it.
No, that's imagine. All right, let's put this situation into play.
Okay.
Tim Tebow gives you a game-winning touchdown.
In what game?
I don't know. Hold on, because I'm not going to say Tim Tebow is going to win a game that gives you the division, just because I can't see that happening unless Ryan Tannehill, Julio Jones, Derrick Henry, and A.J. Brown all get hurt. I think that's your only chance at that point. But an important game against the Titans. You're playing the Titans for a second time. You've already beat them a first time. This would be your second chance to beat the Titans twice in one season. Something I know you would love to do. Mm-hmm. And Tim Tebow is the one that gets this exciting game-winning touchdown that gives you that second win against the Titans.
No, I'm good.
Would you still throw yourself off a bridge?
I'm good. I'd rather lose to the Titans. I'd rather.
Okay. All right. That's big.
I think the circumstances change. Like, is us serving them this loss, keeping them from the playoffs? If so,
okay,
maybe I'll be sad. Like, I don't want him to be the person to do it, but like, fine. It's for a good cause, right?
Yeah.
If
like
it's
charity work.
If it's just like the Colts are going to the playoffs, we know that the Texans suck, and then like the Titans, we just want to win another game against them. It's like, no, not worth it. I'd rather let the Texans win twice than deal with that. But if there's implications like we get to ruin their entire season by kicking them out of the playoffs, like, sure, of course. Like, I don't know. I mean, put anyone back there. Like, put Harvey Weinstein back there. Let him score a touchdown. I don't know. Like, I don't care. If we're keeping them from something they want, absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
All right. That I'm glad we had that conversation.
Yeah. I love that for us. Role play situation.
Oh my God. So this has been the poor AFC South.
Oh.
This might be this. I'm going to say in the AFC, the South is the saddest. In the NFC, the East is the saddest.
We have the worst divisions in football.
No, we really do.
That's pretty sad, honestly.
And we have some of the worst teams.
No, we do.
We're not even a part of the worst divisions. Like, we are favorite. It's not even like we're in the worst. Like, if you were like a Titans fan in the AFC South, it's like, all right, well, at least I'm the Titans. Like, at least I have it in the bag. But
we're not winning our divisions.
No, yep.
We're not winning our bad, terrible, hopeless divisions. Like, the winner of our divisions doesn't stand a chance in the playoffs.
No.
But we can't even win the division.
No. Oh my God. All right. On that note. I think that's our time to say goodbye. All right. Thank you guys so much for tuning in this evening. Carson Wentz, AFC South Talk. Make sure to check us out on Twitter at OnsideChicksPod, at Instagram on Instagram at OnsideChicks. Make sure to subscribe to our YouTube. Check us out on Twitch. We're available wherever you get your podcasts. Make sure to give us a rating, give us a comment. I'm trying to make sure that I check all bases. And there are so many to check all the time. We will be back next week after we've had an official football game, an official preseason game. We love it. We've made it throughout this whole offseason. Thank you guys for joining us this whole time. And now the real fun is just beginning.
Yay. Football's back.
Football is back. All right. We'll see you next week. Bye, guys.